Hello everybody and welcome back to the Resurrected A Winner Is You podcast. As ever, my name is David, and as ever I'm sitting 300 miles across from Mr. Alex Aldridge. How are you doing today, Alex?
Hello sir, I'm doing well.
You ready to go?
I am,
Part 2 of this podcast.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I had to stop myself corpsing during the intro because I remembered when we used to do these and we did our countdown together, which we do like through the really sophisticated professional method of both holding up three fingers and counting down to one. And I remember you always used to just give me the middle finger on one. And I was expecting it, but it didn't come. But I don't know why. It just made me laugh for a little bit there. Forgot about it. It's good to be back.
I thought you said corpsing.
Yeah, that's like the professional term, isn't it, for laughing during...
Oh, is it?
Yeah, like when you laugh during a performance as an actor. It's called corpsing.
Oh, see, what was to me, what I thought when you said that is, remember when we first started podcasting many, many years ago, and my intro was such that you didn't actually get to say anything for a couple of minutes except hello and yes. So I was just like, I thought you were just like some sort of present corpse that wasn't doing anything.
I'm sort of just playing dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, we're ready to do the second half of our top games of the last, I suppose it's last generation now.
Well, this is the problem. I was thinking about this today in the shower, as most men do at a certain age. When I was thinking about the Switch and how it was never really even the last generation anyway, because from a technical standpoint, the Switch wasn't even as powerful as base PS4 or Xbox One.
Nintendo have been messing this up for years now.
Yeah, but it's still technically their current console and relevant.
Yeah.
So it's not. It was never last generation, but it's technically the current generation at the same time. And I know that we've got a Zelda game in here, and it was giving me issues in the shower.
There's also the fact that Microsoft don't currently have really any first-party games, and all these games are still current games for their new platform.
Yeah. Do we have any that are enhanced for Series X?
Oh,
that's going to ruin everything.
I bet you The Witcher is, although I'm not actually. No, they would have been knee-deep in Cyberpunk, wouldn't they, when that came out?
Yeah, they're going to do it, but they haven't done it yet.
I don't think so then.
No, I think we're okay. No, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we may be safe. None of these are allowed to be played on a Series X.
Yeah, even though I have already played one of them on here.
Have you? Oh, yeah, that's right. How many have I played on the brand new console? Just the one. Yeah, I've got The Witcher 3 downloaded, but I haven't ever launched it. I
think I've still.
But
got
we'll
PS4 version. But
anyway. We'll get into that. We'll get into that later because I was about to probably blow my load on that game, so we'll leave that and move on.
Yeah, we're not starting on that one.
Yeah, what we're going to do is we decided how we kind of thought about how we were going to format this, and we thought the best way to do it was to pick a game, and then obviously if we pick the first game, it's going in straight at number one, and then we talk about it, and then we move on to the next game. We'll maybe chat about it, and then we'll decide if it's better or worse than the game we've just selected.
Exactly.
And then we'll build it up till we've got a list of 10.
Yeah,
and that'll be it.
So
hopefully,
a game could slide all the way down from 1 to 10 by the end of the episode. You never know.
It may. We will see.
It might do, yeah.
Well, we'll just dive in then, Alex.
Yeah, go on then. Do you want to go from the top of this? I don't know. There's no order for this list, or do you want to just pick one at random?
Let's pick one at random.
Okay.
And then you can pick first, sir.
All right. Let's talk about Apex Legends, considering that is the game that has been foreshadowed as the game we're still playing right now, and I play on my Series X.
Yeah. So what's your feelings on Apex?
Where did I rank it? So I ranked it number 9, and if it wasn't for us getting back into playing it in the last 2 months or whatever it is, it wouldn't be in here at all. Has it come along? Do you feel like it's come a long way since it first came out?
No.
I guess it hasn't.
In many ways, it's a very much similar game. I think what they've done is they've done a good job of introducing new characters. I think it feels each character that arrives in the world feels like they fit, which I think is nice. None of them feel particularly out of place at the moment as I'm thinking about them. In terms of like supporting it, though, I was saying to you when we started playing it again recently that this is a great start. Start nice and positive, telling you how they've not supported the game properly.
We'll come back round on it.
Yeah, they have the weekly challenges that you can do, and they are the same challenges that I was doing when this game launched as we're still doing today.
Yeah.
It's like get a certain amount of kills, get a certain amount of XP, get a certain amount of kills with a certain weapon, get a certain amount of downs with a certain weapon, use a body armor a certain amount of times. It's just, they're not actually that engaging, I find.
I suppose maybe their history in development has probably led them to think that this is still a working model, because the amount of Call of Duty games they must have worked on where throughout the entire history of the franchise, they probably haven't upgraded their challenges very much.
Yeah, are we talking about money for old rope here?
Probably. The one thing I like about the challenges is at least it gets me trying trying some of the different characters, the ones that I've been able to either waste money on or have spent enough time to unlock. I like
absolutely.
that part about it the most, even though I would say there are characters that I definitely don't enjoy playing as much as others, and some not at all really anyway. But getting me to engage across all of that if I want to progress and get, you can, because they give you quite a lot of I almost said useful, but I don't know if it's entirely useful, but the battle pass does give you a good spread of everything in the game that there is to unlock, so it's worth engaging with if you're going to play it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I think if you're going to play the game, it's something that gives you different ways to keep your interest in the game. And perhaps the fact that the challenges haven't changed in many ways shows how they're useful at the end of the day. So like things like do a certain amount of damage with the L star forced me in the early days to use a weapon that I normally wouldn't go near and would normally actively avoid. Whereas now, because I've had to use it to get achievements ticked off, I'm now comfortable with it. I think so. Like I don't feel that there's any weapon that I feel like I would be completely at sea with if I had a fight with it. There's weapons that I would look at it and say this is useless, and wouldn't choose to. Maybe would be the bottom of the list, but I'm perfectly comfortable with them all, which I suppose is maybe the point in it. Makes you use everything.
Yeah, it can certainly stop you. I mean, well, the fact that you don't get to choose a weapon necessarily straight off the bat, so it's almost like it's sort of perennially tutorializing the main game itself to kind of keep you learning new things that you would not necessarily give any time to otherwise. Say it was a game like Overwatch, which, spoiler alert, we'll get to later, where you may just pick one hero and stick with that. This at least incentivizes you to not do that.
Absolutely. And I perhaps know the answer to this question because it's maybe the only one on the list, but where does this rank in the kind of pantheon of battle royales for you? Okay,
so this part of the game that we're going to discuss right now is obviously the reason why it is in this top 10, because last generation was where that genre of game was pretty much invented and certainly sort of pioneered by a certain few games. And none of them, for me, come anywhere close to Apex Legends in terms of polish, in terms of replayability, in terms of being able to kind of jump into it without needing to have a massive learning curve. It's a mix of enough relevant games that it feels quite natural to get into. You can feel the history from Titanfall in the parkour elements of it. You can feel its influences from things like the hero shooter genre, in terms of the characters that have abilities and ultimates and things like that. But it doesn't have this sort of massive, like a gap between, like, what's the fucking stupid game? Fortnite. That game is, it seems like to me it would have a massive gap between players who are going to build things and players who aren't, and you're never going to meet in the middle with any of that. Whereas this seems like a much more even playing ground. I feel like the heroes are really nicely balanced as well. Whereas I suppose some battle royale games like Warzone or PUBG, that doesn't really come into play. So this gives it more of an element of it's just one game that you've already played, but it's a battle royale now, which too many games have started to do. This actually has it feels like it has a reason to be a battle royale in the first place, and every element of it, in my opinion, is done really, really well almost to the height of each of their genres. The heroes elements are great. The shooting is really tight. The parkour is really fun. The movement around the battlefield on the zip lines and going through the warp. What is that thing called?
The warp. Yeah, I don't know.
Driving cars now as well.
Yeah.
It's Yeah, it's got everything in it that makes that comes together better than any of the other battle royale games that are out there, which I'm sure you agree with. But I mean, would you agree that it's the best of the genre?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think I would agree with pretty much everything you've said, and to the point that like we were talking about how the challenges and in sort of the little peripheral things to keep you interested that they've added to the game are almost non-existent. I also think they have to be given kudos because they have added many things that other battle royales haven't added. For instance, I think we've got 3 maps now in the game, and I can't actually think of another battle royale that has changed map and continued on. PUBG basically died a death when they started introducing new maps.
Yeah.
The Fortnite map is a sort of living map that is always changing, so we'll give it that, but also it's the one map, so I think that's good. And like you're saying, they're adding, every time they add a character, it feels like it fits, and all their abilities don't feel overpowered, but they also don't feel underpowered once you learn how to use them in a particular way. They're all useful in their own specific way, and like I think we touched on it when we spoke about Titanfall 2 in the last podcast, but Respawn just know how to make a game, a first person shooter that feels great to handle.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I think that's half the battle, and this game is up there with the best. And this is not a whataboutery looking at the other games, but then things like Call of Duty, when they start adding really powerful juggernauts that basically spoiled the game, because it meant that if you didn't have that armor outfit by the end of the game, you were out. Whereas this game, you're certainly at a disadvantage if you don't have good shields, but I wouldn't say you're totally out of it in any fight, really.
No, especially if you know how to use your character's abilities properly to your advantage, then you can overcome somebody having better armor than you for sure. That's an interesting point that you've made there as well, and something that needs to be said about the game is that it's a really, really good multiplayer shooter. It doesn't necessarily need to be kept away from the others like that, just in the battle royale genre, because I would rather play this than just a straight up Call of Duty multiplayer game or a number of the other things like Battlefield, because of just how, as you say, how well it handles and how smooth it is to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what was it? I can't remember the actual saying, but people say that when other things and people copy you, that's the biggest compliment you can get. And now, basically every battle royale, including Fortnite and including Call of Duty, all have respawn mechanics. And I think that's because of Respawn's Apex Legends, which started the whole thing, and said that, look, just because you've got a battle royale here, it doesn't have to be one and done. As long as you've got a teammate that's willing to try and get you out of there. It's going to be tough when you come back in, but you can get back into the game. And I've won games like that where I've died and been brought back and brought back teammates and stuff. So it's a really cool mechanic, and it keeps other players engaged, because when I've died in other battle royale games, sitting and watching your friends isn't the best thing in the world to do. Whereas at least you've got a sort of dog in the fight still, even after you die.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a scenario where somebody's died, if you've survived, that you're not going to immediately try and revive them at a station nearby, and then you've got you've got everyone kind of cheering you on as you run to bring them back in again, and then help them get their weapons back or whatever.
Now, this might be difficult. Sorry, were you going to say something else there, Alex?
I'm not sure. I was probably just going to say that the only issue I would have with it is obviously the monetization that it does, because it's never really got that
egregious
down.
Isn't it, in ways, but it's not an excuse. It's all unacceptable. It's sort of par for the course for this genre these days. And
it's a free game, so you don't have to pay anything, but what they charge for what they give you has never been acceptable, and it's never been reasonable.
No. My feelings on microtransactions are so mixed, because in some ways I look at it and, like you say, think it's a free game. I am very nearly a level 100 now. I've probably played this game for around 50 hours. So I've got a lot. I've got money's worth out of it that I have put into it, I would say. But on the flip of that, it's in these scenarios, it's maybe not necessarily the fact that microtransactions exist in a free game. It's what that represents. So take it out with Apex for a second. Like Battlefield 1 is another shooter I've had a lot of fun with over this year, and there's no way that game was designed aesthetically the way it was designed, or there's no way it would have been designed in that way if microtransactions didn't exist. It was designed in a way that was a cartoony version of the World War One, so that they could resell you skins of the characters. And that's the sort of thing that bugs me. It's when that microtransactions starts dictating the design of a game. And
there's a common denominator here, of course.
Yeah. And the fact that it's in games like this, as much as I engage with it, so I'm part of the problem, but it just doesn't sit easy with me, because it makes me think that games aren't being designed for the art, they're being designed for extracting money from us. But hey, that's the industry, isn't it? It's just to try and nickel and dime its fans as much as they can.
Yeah. It's the free to play model that confuses me the most. It's to have a company like EA bring out and publish a game that is free on the surface seems fantastic, and it definitely got a lot of fans out of it from that, especially as we discussed, I think previously, that that was Titanfall, wasn't it? That got absolutely railroaded by being released the same time as Battlefield.
That's right. Yeah.
But this developer has obviously been shafted by EA before, and there was really no fanfare behind this game. There was no marketing.
This one just dropped.
Yeah, it just came out. It's free. Off you go. And that's a big reason why I think it got a lot of legions of fans, is because to have no expectations or even knowledge of a game and then have it be as amazing and fun as it was for free was a revelation at the time. It's just a shame that, I don't know, they don't even seem to have ever released it, have they? Like, I don't know how much you've paid, and I don't know the maths behind what you would have to pay to play all the characters from the get-go, but if this game popped up for 25 quid, I wouldn't pay it now, but maybe at the beginning, if it said you'll get all the characters right away, maybe that would have done enough, and they wouldn't need to have been as
possibly
shitty as they have been. But
ultimately,
I feel like that's what's going to drag this down maybe a little bit in the list, which is why I brought it up when it's, we're supposed to be talking about how great.
No, I think it's absolutely valid, and I'm trying to work out. I would guess conservatively I've probably spent about £60 on it, because I've bought 3 battle passes and I've maybe spent probably about 3 months in total playing it, and during that month I'll buy 1 set of coins as well. So I think that would be about what I've spent on it, and for the amount of hours I've got in it, I'm okay with that personally, but each to their own. It's what you can afford. I'm trying to look this game up on Metacritic to see how much what it ranks at.
Yeah, but I don't think I've ever really read any reviews for it. I just kind of jumped in and enjoyed it.
I mean, yes, this is a difficult one. Like, how do you even review a living game that's changing all the time?
Yeah,
this is going to be a tough thing to do, though, Alex. But where do you want to rank it on this big list we've got so far?
Well, I think it just goes at number 1, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes straight at number 1.
So then we'll just, as we said,
doesn't even touch the sides.
It may drop down. Doesn't even touch the sides.
Okay, let's move on and do Overwatch then.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Okay.
Let's stay on the shooter bandwagon.
Might as well.
Let's get them both out of the way. This is another game that we have spent an awful lot of time playing together.
Yeah, and my hands are on my head now, because this isn't a comparison I thought I was going to have to make this early on. Because to peer behind the curtain of me, the curtain of me? Yeah, fine, go for it.
The curtain of Alex, yeah. What colour is your curtain?
Does it match the carpet? Or anyway,
are you?
There is no. If you're talking in metaphors like that, I don't think I even have a curtain anymore. It's flesh colour. Anyway, I'm bald is the joke. Right, so I was playing Overwatch a lot before we jumped onto Apex Legends, and now we play Apex Legends a lot. But it feels like as well we're going to have to caveat almost every game in this list with the fact that their publishing company is fucking horrible people.
Yeah, that's just standard for the video game industry these days, though, isn't it?
Should we just, if we cut that out of it, then Overwatch, I don't even know where to start with this thing. It is...
So I'd say for me, it's the same sort of spend a Friday night with your mates, having a good laugh, probably taking a game that you're not very good at far too seriously, but doing it anyway because it's fun. But it's different because it's not a battle royale. It's a more traditional team-based 4v4 with some twists, I guess.
Yeah,
I find it a hard game to describe, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, it's one where I have seen people try to get involved with this game, and it does require And you feel like you always have to say this to these people as well, is that you're really going to have to learn it. Whereas Apex Legends, there's not really that much learning to go on. Yes, you're going to have your own abilities and ultimates.
You
but
can
really,
get by.
Really they are just kind of supplement to having a gun in your hand. Whereas in Overwatch, obviously, some of the characters don't have a gun. They will have a hammer or a laser beam or whatever, or an orb. So I've played with people recently who have gone from traditional shooters into this, maybe as a, I'm just going to get involved with the people who are playing games online and they've switched to this, so I need to play this as well. And I've really struggled to pick it up because it's such a different experience from your typical online shooter, because you really have to know composition, you need to know positioning, you need to know tactics, you need to know timings of when to use things and when not. You can't just run around shooting people and taking people on as a one-man army. You will never, ever win the game that way. And once you get past that initial overwhelming feeling of who to pick, because as we just said, unlike Apex, you actually get all the characters from the beginning, and every new character you get automatically as well. It's so hard to know who to start with, what you're going to like. Developing your style obviously takes a lot of time, and the rewards for that, I feel, can be among the best, certainly in multiplayer gaming, that I've ever experienced. If you can really get to learn a character well, and you can feel like you're contributing to a team, and you can climb the rankings, and you can make really effective plays, get play of the game, get all the the medals at the end, it can feel so satisfying to know that you've learnt the mechanics of this quite obtuse game. Which on the surface just kind of looks like a really sparkly, happy, cartoony shooter, but absolutely isn't. And it's done as well as it has and got the following that it has and the esports league that it has, because it is constantly being refined and updated and balanced all the time. Probably more than most games are, probably because the fan base is so picky and can get so toxic about it. But at the same time, I think now Overwatch, now it's got past this shield thing, that meta that they had for a while, is now in a really, really good place again, and it's just become a really good tactical team-based shooting game that I have played since the year it came out, which I think was 2016, and still love it to this day. And I can see myself going back into it again at some point in the next in this year as well. It's just really fantastic, and it's got a lot of character to it and a lot of replayability. There are so many characters to learn and change your styles that can be changed in a way that no other multiplayer shooters offer. And that's why it's such a great... I mean, I just started playing Zarya, who I absolutely used to hate, but I love playing her now. And that it's almost an endless game in terms of that.
Yeah, that's right. And I like you're saying, I enjoy the way it's been completely balanced. And this one, in almost a contrast to Apex, has changed quite significantly since it's come out now. Like, especially with the matchmaking, it used to be a bit of a free for all. Everybody picked DPS characters, and then it was quite difficult to find players to then take others. But it now forces you into a proper team makeup now, which is quite interesting. And like you're saying, I like the fact that, like, I've played this game probably not as much as you, but I have played a significant amount of this game as well. And there's characters and ways of playing this game that I have absolutely no idea what to do with. Like Zarya is a good example of one, but I like that because it's one of these games, unlike Apex, that you have a play. If you're wanting to play with a group of friends and you're maybe not one of these Twitch shooter kind of guys, there's still a place for you in a team. There's that you can be a healer, you can be the tanks, and each of these healers and tanks both have different roles within a team that you need to utilize differently. And like when I used to play a lot as Mercy, I would go entire nights playing with you guys, and I maybe would shoot a gun twice. Maybe that's because I'm playing Mercy badly, but
then again, like, you would be the one that people would be talking about at the end of the game, because you'll be the one who's revived somebody from death or given them heals when they needed it, and you're going to be doing the memorable stuff.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that part of the game, whereas I don't think I would have quite stuck with it as long as if I had just gone Soldier 76,
no.
Which is like the Call of Duty character of the game, who I do like going, by the way, but if that was all the game was, it wouldn't have the same draw that this sort of wide-ranging options of how to play the game within the sphere of the same rule set. I just think I can't actually think of a game that I've played personally. I'm sure there are other games like that, but one that just offers such a breadth of variety and allows different players to utilize their different skill sets. It's not just like, oh, he's the shooter guy, he's going to kick our ass for a night until we move on to a different game that I'm better at.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can get a real attachment to the game and the way it plays, and you can really dive deep and be a real nerd about it. And when something kind of gets its hooks into you like that, you're going to remember it and it's going to feel more special to you. So if I'm sitting there watching hero guide videos on how to play this new meta or how to play this new character or how they've had a buff, and I got so into this stuff in a way that I've never got before, because a lot of the time you're only just going to play sort of single player games, or you're going to shoot people in Call of Duty and it's guns. Yeah. Whereas, as you say, the breadth of variety in this means that you kind of, at some point, you're going to have to specialize. And at that point, you can either drop off or you can go in deep. And if you go in deep, then you're going to get a lot out of it. And this is why it's being talked about by the two of us as one of our favorite games of the last however many years, 7 years or whatever it is.
Exactly. Where would you put it on the list, Alex? Do you think it's better than Apex Legends?
I would say I probably would put it above Apex Legends, yeah. Purely because it's so different to everything else.
I was looking at my list here, and Apex Legends on my personal list is quite a bit higher than Overwatch. But to be honest, looking at this list, 8 to 4, I really couldn't choose between them. And if you catch me on a different day, I would probably put them in a different order. So I think like for me personally, I think I prefer Apex Legends because it does something that I maybe enjoy more. That's not to say I don't like Overwatch, because I do.
I get it
a lot. But I think objectively, Overwatch has done so much more for the shooter genre, and I think probably I would agree with you in terms of putting it above Apex Legends for the final joint list.
Okay.
Like I say, if it was a David list, Overwatch should be lower, but if I'm trying to be objective, I think Apex is probably... It hasn't really done much that's different. When you actually boil it down, it is just a sort of, let's take the special moves from Overwatch and put them in a Battle Royale game.
Let's make a Call of Duty game with wacky people in it.
Exactly.
And then Call of Duty copied that, because I'm pretty sure in Black Ops 4, 3, one of them, they started having loads of, special classes with different powers and ultimate moves and stuff.
Yeah,
so,
they did. Yeah.
I don't know, it'd be interesting to see by the time we get to the end of this if these two stay parallel to each other.
Stay together. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm interested to see. Let's see if you can pick a new game. One? I picked Overwatch, yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to just talk about Yakuza for a bit then?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, this isn't really research because I've obviously played the game, but I'm just going to tell you, I've got a list here of all the extra stuff you can do in Yakuza 0, and I'm just going to read it to you. Some guy on Steam was answering a question of what are the mini games. So here, let me just read them out to you. So you've got Blackjack, Texas Hold'em, Roulette, and Baccarat in the Western gambling subgenre. You've got Mahjong, CeeLo, Chohan, Oicho Cabo, and Koi Koi, which is some Japanese gambling. You can go in an arcade and play Fantasy Zone, Outrun, Space Harrier, Super Hang-On, or play the UFO catcher where you grab toys out of a thing. You can play darts, you can play pool, you can go fishing, you can do bowling, you can go to a batting cage and hit home run balls. You can do karaoke. You can do a telephone club minigame, which is one of the funniest things I've ever played, where you basically ring up a sex line and the minigame is to choose the right thing to say to the woman on the end of the phone so she doesn't think you're weird. And some of the things that they put in there to try and put you off that are almost similar to the right thing, like, I don't know, I'd really like to cuddle you in bed, and it'll be something like, I'd really like to muddle you up with some bread, to try and like confuse you. I was crying with laughter at the different weird things it could make you say. There's a cat fighting like betting thing where you can pick a favorite woman to have a cat fight in an arena, and then it's almost like it works as if it's a rock paper scissors type mini game, but it's basically all it is it's just going to end up with scantily clad women doing wrestling moves on each other. So there's that.
That sounds very Japanese. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
on brand.
You can go to a hostess club and talk to the hostesses and try and get them to go out with you, and there's a mini game involved in that. You can play shogi, which I think most Western players of this game is like their nightmare because no one can be asked to learn it to get the 100%, but you have to if you want to. You can go to a disco club, where you play like a dancing mini game, and it's a really weird way of playing it where you've got like a grid of squares and you have to move this little square around and to where there's a button prompt in this grid of squares. It'll have like a triangle button, and you've got to move the square to the triangle button and press it at the right timing. And the more you've moved it around the big grid before you get to where the triangle is, the highest score you're going to get. While these two dudes dance to these brilliant 80s songs that have become memes within themselves.
So is it all trying to be funny, or is...
Well, all of this is pretty funny, yeah, because I haven't even finished yet. There's a pocket racing mini game where you have to like collect and build up little, basically Scalextric cars, but that has an entire story within it as well, where the guy who does the commentary on the pocket racing is like in his 30s and he's not married yet, and he's single and he's alone and he's unhappy, and his dad tells him he needs to get a proper job, but your character, being the good guy that he is, convinces him to stay commentating on pocket races so all the kids can enjoy themselves. There's what else is there? There's a real estate minigame that's really fleshed out where
this game is absolutely mad.
Yeah, you kind of invest in properties around the city. You build them up. You have to assign staff to work there. Sometimes you'll get notified that one of your properties is getting attacked by rival sort of businessmen who are really criminals, so you have to go and beat these people up so they don't wreck your property. There'll be like boss battles that you have, which is also another activity that you do in the cabaret club management, which is in the different city. There's 2 cities and 2 characters you play as. So one of them is in Kamurocho, which is Tokyo, and he does the business side of it. The other guy is Majima. He's in Sotenbori, which is supposed to be Osaka, I think. And this is where you run your own hostess club, so you have to dress your hostesses, put them in makeup and give them nice hair and dresses, and you have to like give them, the more you use them, you'll get experience points, and customers will come in and they'll want a certain type of girl, like a cute one or a funny one. So you have to pick the right girl for the customer so you get more money. And I'm pretty sure there's also like an underground battle royale where you do like just fights in cages, and there'll be special weapons matches or fire matches. And my God, I'm out of breath talking about it. That's just the mini games. And then on top of all of that, you've got, like I said, 2 characters that you're playing as who both have their own stories, both of them incredibly engaging, really dramatic, loads of twists and turns, brilliantly acted. And that's where the game gets really gritty and very serious and very Japanese Yakuza feeling. And then almost everything else around the game, the numerous side quests, are all just so self-effacing, tongue-in-cheek, silly. They're almost shocking at times as well. That this game is impossible to dislike because there are so many things to do. There are so many ways that you can change what your experience is going to be at any given time. You can spend hours doing the dressing up hostesses, or you can mainline the story and see people getting shot in the face and stabbed and hanged and betrayed and double-crossed and go to prison and all this kind of stuff. And at the crux of it all is these 2 characters, Majima and Kazuma, are the series staple characters. They've always basically been, Kazuma Kiryu is Batman and Goro Majima is the Joker. So he's this crazy, insane psycho who has to have Kiryu around basically to exist. Kind of the way Joker says, I could never kill you, Batman. You're my reason for being. Because he just wants to do things to get Batman to notice him and beat him up or whatever. So these 2 characters are so well written, and because this is an origin story that lets you come in at the ground level and get to know them as youngsters, including a lot of other characters that are going to be in later games as well. The fact that they've made this so engaging and given so much to a story that's was already like nearly 6 games in by the time this came out is a real testament to not only the quality of the Japanese writing, but the insane level of quality that there is in the localization. The game is all sorts of everything. It's dramatic, it's horrific. It's hilarious. It's heartwarming. It's got everything. It's got charm. It's so good. And this whole series, as I said in the last episode, absolutely gripped me and made me just want to play all of them before I snuff it, which I don't even know if I'm going to because they're so long.
How long will it take you to complete?
Well, I'm up to number 4 now, so I've got 4, 5, and 6 to do with the normal ones, and then I've started 7 because that's not really related because it's a new character in a new place.
Right. Okay.
So they usually these games will take, if you just mainlined the plot and did a couple of side missions or something, it would probably take you 30 to 40 hours, but you can get hundreds of it if you start doing all the car racing, all the cabaret club, all the business club, all the card games, and everything. It takes forever, but you can speed run the game in a couple of hours.
Okay.
I've never played. I know people always kind of look at these games on the surface and think, "Oh, this looks like it's basically just Japanese Grand Theft Auto," but it just isn't. It's so different to anything else. Fundamentally, at its core, it is just an action brawling game with tons of little mini games in it and a long plot with lots of cutscenes, but the overall experience is so fun. And even though they've used the same city in almost every single game in the series, it feels comforting to go back to Kamurocho every time you boot one of these games up, and you can remember where everything is, but it looks slightly better because it's a newer version of the game and things have slightly changed, or it's a different era. This is in the 80s. The current games are set in the modern day, and then some of them are set in the 90s. So
yeah,
I could ramble on all night long, and I don't think this game's going to get really high because you've not played it. So it would be harsh to just say, "Oh yeah, but I want it near the top," because I would have it near the top. But
no, I think that's fair though. I'm trying to look at this list, and I think what we've done here is we've created a top 10 list of our best games of the generation, and I think I can objectively look at this and say, you've told me enough about it that I know enough about your ability to critique a game to know that can you objectively look at this and is it better than Overwatch and Apex Legends or one of the two, and where would you have it? And I'm quite happy to go with you on this because I know it's a game I would like. And
I've never wanted people I know to get into this to any series as much as I have this one.
Yeah.
I just the only thing is it worries me that whether people would get it or not, or whether they would just think it was dumb or weird or wacky or what, I don't know.
I sniff this as the new number 1 for me.
Well, I would love it to go there.
Well, let's do it. Let's stick it in there. I mean, there's plenty of games on this list that we're not going to agree on, and that's fine. But I trust you that you can put this game into a good place. Like I say, it sounds like you're saying, you could brand it as a GTA clone, but Japanese. But it really does at least seem to me from looking at it from the outside that is doing it a massive disservice, and that it's so much more than that. And that I guess maybe there's so many of them, a lot of people might find them impenetrable because I'm not even sure where to start with these things.
Exactly, and this is why this game is so good, because without this, I wouldn't know either.
Mm-hmm. Oh, is this like the starting place, Yakuza 0? This is where
this is the prequel, this is the beginning. So before this, of course, you had all of the original first 2 were on the PS2 until they then the success of 0 is what forced them to then remake 1 and 2 in this engine. Mm-hmm. But I think 2 is actually in the Yakuza 6 engine. But without that, I think people would basically be starting on 3. You're not really going to want to go and play a PS2 game because it's very difficult to then get into a series if that doesn't feel good enough in 2020. Yeah. And 2021 even. And I think a key thing we need to remind people listening to this is obviously this is not going to be objective.
No.
So there's some games in here that David's picked because they made him feel a certain way or they did something for him in this generation. And for me, so much of what I've played on these consoles has been Yakuza games now because of this game. And it's completely changed what I've been playing over the last 5-6 years because of this. I would have never gone near it otherwise. So
what you're saying is you're the Iwanuju editor-in-chief of Yakuza games.
I take that mantle with honour, sir.
with honour and pride.
Yeah.
And then you dress it up as a lady of the night.
Well, sure, yeah. Make sure she's got
for a mini game.
I used to fucking set them all in different colours, for fuck's sake. So I'd make sure that one of them was wearing like green. If she had a green dress, I'd give her green eye contacts, green hairspray, green fucking blusher. Jesus Christ. And that's one of them things. There's so many things in this game that you have to be careful that your wife doesn't walk in while you're playing, because it's really hard to explain what's going on and how it's totally fine. It's just a game. But why are you doing it? Why are you pretending to be on a phone sex line to a Japanese lady? I don't know either, but I love this.
I don't know, but here you are.
Yeah. So
speaking on phone sex lines, what do you think about God of War?
You know what? I was going to suggest that we talk about something that you have played that I haven't instead first.
Yeah, sure.
Because I just spoke for so long. I feel like you need to talk about Jesus. Putting Red Dead Redemption is really going to... This is the cat that's going to get thrown amongst these pigeons. So go for it.
Yeah.
You talk about that for a bit.
This is going to be a difficult one, but I mean, like, video games have the ability to do so many... They're so diverse and so broad these days and they have the ability to do so many different things and complete and offer so many different fulfillments. For example, like if we're talking about Overwatch and Apex, I love those games mechanically, but chiefly what they do is especially in 2020, is they've been a way for me to spend time with my friends.
Yeah.
When they live at opposite ends of the country or we can't go out and meet each other. And more as we get older and people are getting married and having kids and settling down and have full-time jobs, we don't have the same amount of time that we used to play everything. I remember when Alex and I launched, or you and I, Alex, because I'm speaking to you, when we launched I Wonder As You first time around 10 years ago when we were at university, not only were there less games coming out, but also we had far more time, and we could actually pretty much play every big game that came out as well as most of the indie releases. Yeah. Whereas now, we can't do that. Like, I tried to make a top 10 games this year, and I couldn't make 10 games of games that were released this year, just because I'm far more picky and choosy from how I'm playing my games these days than I used to be. So, like, those games are a vehicle to spend time with people that don't have as much time on their hands as they used to. And there's other games on this list, like Legend of Zelda, which is a game about exploration. You've got, I'm not just going to go through the list, but you've got Resident Evil 2, which is like a horror game. It's a classic. You've got The Witcher 3, which is all about story. Whereas Red Dead Redemption, other than spending time with my friends, it did everything for me. And there's another game that maybe is on this list that I would argue that is rival it in terms of world building, but it's rare that I have played a game that is so complete and feels so authentic when you exist in it. Yeah. Like, it feels odd. So, like, I think, I'm not speaking for you, Alex, I'm speaking for sort of general people, a lot of people that bounce off this game. What I hear constantly in podcasts and chatting to people that don't like it is that essentially they were expecting a Grand Theft Auto game. And because that's what Red Dead Redemption was. It was GTA with horses.
Yeah, it was.
But then when they loaded it up, this Red Dead Redemption 2 is so different from that I think it was almost a shock to the system, and they just didn't get what they expected. And in many ways, like when you're playing games like Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto, you run around at full speed to get to your car, to then zoom at full speed everywhere, like smashing in between traffic. When in real life, we're not talking about real life, but in real life, if you did that, you'd just be arrested and put in prison. That would be the end of your story very, very quickly. It would be a very short campaign. Yeah. Whereas it feels odd to do things like that in Red Dead Redemption. It feels odd to go smashing through a town because the game will default to make you walk rather than run. And what that did, and I think I found it difficult in the first stages, but at some point it clicked for me. And what that did was created this world that I just loved existing in. And I talk about attachment, and I'm quite hyperbolic when it comes to games that really capture my imagination. But genuinely, with this game, I've never been just so attached to everyone in the game. And because you've played the first Red Dead Redemption, or because I had, you had an inclination about, spoiler alert, things weren't going to end well. And it was just so heart-wrenching when things came to an end, because you knew it was going to happen the whole time, but you still get so caught up and carried away and attached to these characters. Writing is phenomenal in this game, and there are problems with it. I think it wants to be, and it is in many ways. It's like, so like, for example, there's a big cat in the world. And this cat is it's so detailed that it's almost got its own AI. So what it'll do is it will actually go out hunting rabbits, and it'll catch rabbits. And if something happens that scares it off, or means that it leaves the rabbit corpse behind, the rabbit corpse will also rot and decompose in game time with what's going on. And then the rabbits will reproduce, so that there's more rabbits to be caught by. And it's like, why did that need to be done? It didn't. You could have just had a tiger that ran about and tried to shoot people. But there's the level and attention to detail is just unlike anything I've ever encountered in this game. And I did stray into the problems because it is not completely without its problems. I think what they've done is they've created a world that players want or should want to exist in and be in and absorb and take at it at the pace that it wants you to go at. But the missions almost take you out of that, because the problem I had is that the game wanted me to act in this way, but every time you did a campaign mission, it reverted back to GTA style missions: running, gun, shoot, run away, kill everyone. You're still killing like hordes of people, and that was really quite jarring. It's why it was really quite jarring and took you out of it. But just the world is just unlike anything. It feels like a Western, and it feels like when you walk in and say you've misbehaved in a town, the game remembers that you've misbehaved in the town. And when you're walking into the bar, people will shout things at you, and maybe someone will come and start a fight with you to push you out the town. And even if you've paid off your bounty, the police might not be chasing you around, but going back to that town still isn't a completely comfortable experience. And I've just never had a game that just felt as authentic as this game does. It's a true masterpiece in my opinion, but I say this again and again. I understand why people don't like it. I totally get it, but there's nothing like it. It's unbelievable in my opinion.
Primarily, I think what I remember the issues people had with it, including myself, was that it just kind of felt a little bit maybe mechanically creaky, where it had done so much, as you say, in terms of building the world, creating such an incredible script and a cast of characters and a really gripping and involving narrative that's going to carry the game through. But some of it just still felt a little bit too close to a game based off of an engine that was quite old, a 360 engine by this point. And when you added to that things like having to take your weapons manually off your horse all the time, and as you say, being defaulted to walking instead of running, still having to pick somebody up in a horse or in a carriage or whatever to then drive them to your mission so they can have the expositional dialogue on the way there.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff just kind of felt a little bit rote by that point, where it's almost like people wanted it to be GTA because they wanted it to feel a certain way, and when it didn't feel that way, but then started bringing back all the GTA stuff that maybe had already passed its sell-by date, I think that's maybe what couldn't help me sort of stick on through to the end. But what you've touched on there that really needs to sort of go in the favour of this game is how much of an indictment it is against something like your Cyberpunk 2077, where to exist as it does, and I don't really know, I can't speak totally in depth about it, but I've not really heard that this game runs terribly on a base PS4. As far as I'm aware, it's not. This doesn't have any issues, certainly not to the level that Cyberpunk does. So in terms of a product and just a piece of entertainment media, as you say, it is a masterpiece because it's astounding, the level of attention to detail, as you said, just everything that goes into it to make it into this whole. Whether I enjoyed the way that it felt mechanically or how well paced it was, maybe I thought it was a little bit too slow at times or whatever. And as you say, you had to kind of get to a point where you accepted that and played it the way that it wanted to be played. You may have said that in the last episode.
I think so.
Which was something that clearly I needed to be told and needed to get in my head when I was playing it. That Westerns, to watch them, they aren't action movies, really. They have gunfights in them, but most of the time they are to do with people interacting with one another. Yeah, exactly. And therefore, in terms of creating a virtual Western, I mean, nothing has ever come close and probably ever will unless they make another one. So their vision has clearly been realised to a way that some people didn't like, but to a way that they clearly wanted it to. And that needs to be commended.
Looking back through Rockstar games, they've been working on their storytelling, and to me, this is, I think, I think to an extent, in some ways you could say that it came at the expense of the gameplay in terms of like things like animation priority over nice snappy mechanics.
Yeah.
But their storytelling in this game is just, I think it's the pinnacle, and I wonder if it's maybe the best and last that we'll get from a developer. Because it costs so much, there's few developers that can afford and would put the effort into making a game like this, and
especially with the scrutiny on crunch. That
exactly, and
that has done at that studio for a long time.
And now it's sort of a changing of the guards at Rockstar. Now all the big founding members have now left the company, so it was a good swan song for the developers, and we might never see a game like it again. We might not.
I think the story is my biggest regret for not sticking with it. That I missed out on that. That's the thing that I think I would go back into it for.
Yeah, it's a true masterpiece in my opinion. And I get it. Like I think, like I'm trying to look at where this goes in this list because I think it's about time we moved on to the next game. But it's one of these ones that I'm struggling with because for me it's the best game of the generation, but I think like it's unlike, so like I'm looking at Yakuza here, and it's not so much like I'm looking at Yakuza and I sort of nothing it because I haven't played it, whereas I get from you that you sort of actively dislike Red Dead 2. So
I think I was more indifferent with it rather than disliking it. It didn't.
Okay.
It just didn't get its hooks in, and I think I got to a point where I thought to myself it was going to take far too long for me to want to invest any more time in it because it wasn't exactly what I expected. It wasn't that I hated it. It's just I thought this game is so long and there are so many I would rather play instead. Right now, I'm just going to move on. But I have no issue with it going in at number one right now because...
Yeah, I think it's going to slip down quite a bit looking at what's coming. But if you're happy with that, let's move it in at number one and move on.
Yeah, it can't. If it was your number one game in your personal list, so it can't go anywhere else.
Sure. Okay, let's do it. Thanks, Alex. Let's go.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to pick God of War next. I was going to say let's from one big burly man with a beard to another, but not everybody's Arthur had a big beard.
And we're not just talking about each other either.
No, exactly. I think this is probably the main character you look most like. If we're taking all the main characters in each of this top 10.
People at work call me it all the time.
Yeah.
If ever I get annoyed, there's a GIF going round where like some guy dressed up like Kratos chucks a computer into a dumpster outside an office, and they just keep sending me that if ever I get annoyed at work. I take it. He's badass.
Yeah, he's badass, and that is a mighty beard he's got going on.
It is. I aspire to it.
Over the years, I've become quite cautious. I was going to say resistant, but that was the completely wrong word. Cautious towards games that want to force me to have emotional connections with children. I feel like it's quite heavily done and quite overdone these days. But this is one game that kind of they brought the child into the gameplay enough that he was a useful piece. He wasn't just something that you're dragging along trying not to let it die.
Yeah.
He was an active participant in the combat and the moment-to-moment action of the game, to the point that actually it worked quite well, and that allowed me to then sort of grow an attachment to the characters. And they gave Kratos a personality, which is unbelievable and unthinkable to this game. Yeah. And I think they brought it forward and modernized the game in a way that it maybe needed. I think it was a game that there's been a few of these. How many of them have there been? 4?
This was technically the fourth one, I think. But if you're talking about sort of the numbered versions, because there is another one, I think it's Judgment or something like that.
Yeah, they had. Well, there's, if you forget the handheld console one, there's 1, 2, 3, and then there's that one that had multiplayer.
Yeah, I can't remember what that was called.
No, neither can I. It just kind of came and went though.
Yeah.
But that, I don't think it did very well. So I don't know. What do you think about what they did with God of War with this game?
I think I've almost sort of had to remind myself as you were talking that this is the game that basically looked as if it was one entire cut of a film, wasn't it? There was no...
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's no loading. Well, no cuts. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sticks behind Kratos the entire time. And to compare that to the original games, they were very, very influenced by Devil May Cry sort of hyper action, fast paced games. Whereas this feels something more like it's almost like a Dark Souls sort of feeling to it, where it's a lot more kind of gritty, over the shoulder combat focus. You were using the trigger buttons, I think, or the shoulder buttons to do your combat this time.
Yeah, oh, so you were, yeah.
It's all about sort of parrying and things like that. I was actually quite skeptical, I'm pretty sure, because as being a fan of the original games, you know, it seemed like it was maybe not the way that I thought that the series needed to go. I didn't understand why they felt it had to go this way, but with your sort of what you've said there, looking back at it, I can understand now. This was almost like the one that we can't remember the name of was their, I don't know, their Code Veronica, if you want, and this is the Resident Evil 4, where the whole series has now been flipped on its head. I mean, he's not even in Greece anymore.
No.
So
change religions and everything.
Yeah. And as you say, the characterization of Kratos was almost unbelievable. It shouldn't have been possible, as you said. Now, they did seem to, in my opinion, on the kid, I think his name's Artorias, is it?
I bet it turns out at the end, he's not like Floki or something.
Oh, yeah, maybe, yeah. But I feel like they almost fell into that trap where games or media that tries to make you deal with, as you say, the relationship between an adult and a child almost always seems to default to having the child be sarcastic, cocky, annoying at the beginning, and then suddenly chill out towards the end as their bond grows with the person. And it does do that. And it almost pushed me to the side of, this kid is just a prick and I don't want to be friends with him anymore.
Oh, when he discovered he was a god. Oh my goodness.
Yes. So they really put it... Yeah.
Asshole.
Yeah. But as you say, towards the end, he actually becomes a really fun element of the combat, which was fantastic. The sounds as well in this game was so damn it, there's that word again.
There's that word.
But it was really, and it really punctuated the action in it so well that it mixed with this constant sticking behind of Kratos, even in these massive boss fights, whereas usually you'd be seeing the camera pan out and you'd have these fixed camera angles and Kratos would be a tiny little speck up against a massive Greek god. This time it felt really, really personal, and it allowed you to kind of, as you say, build yourself into enjoying those personal relationships that he was going to have with people. That fight you have with the dude who can't die near the beginning is one of the best set pieces of the entire generation.
I think for me that's what makes the game so much more engaging. The type of game that God of War used to be and other games of that genre, what puts me off is that you're doing all these things with these melee weapons, swinging them about, hitting people, and there's no sense of weight or actual connection between the weapon and the characters that you're fighting against, whereas everything really feels really heavy and thudding, and like every fight is just the word is visceral that I'm trying to dance around here, but you're right, it's like everything has meaning. Tangible, like when you hit someone with an axe, you can you can feel. Well, you don't actually feel it because you don't know what that feels like.
You might on the PS5 controller for the next one.
Yeah, you might. There's weight to it, which is, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Really good point.
That's what makes the combat so engaging for me.
Absolutely.
And even receiving hits are the same way in the opposite direction. And yeah, this is just a fantastic revitalize. It's the Madonna of the modern era, isn't it? Really, it's bringing itself and reimagining itself into something that's going to sell well. And it came at a time where, still too, like I don't think there's any microtransactions that I'm aware of in the game.
I think so.
They were just happy to make a story, design it for how it's meant to be and how they wanted it to look, and release it.
I feel like this was the catalyst as well to Sony's new stance on single player games, where it came out.
Let's just make single player games,
where everything's being dominated by multiplayer or microtransactions or live services, whereas this game came out, sold gangbusters, everyone raved about it, and now they've done, since then, you've done your Spider-Mans and your Last of Us 2 and your Ghost of Tsushima and everything like that, and they're continuing on with that stance into the next generation as well.
Are you looking forward to the next game?
Very much so, yeah.
Because of off the back of this one.
Yeah.
I was looking at our rankings list, and funnily enough, we've both put it in exactly the same spot. My feeling for this is that it goes in at number 3, ahead of Overwatch and Apex, maybe behind Yakuza. How do you feel about that?
Now, if I remember rightly, when we were doing the Gamertron podcast, we actually gave this the Game of the Year, whatever year that it was. I don't think it was actually that good a year that it came out for everything else. It's so hard to compare with Yakuza, but that is the folly of doing a list like this.
That's you're butting up against the folly of these sorts of lists.
Because Yakuza obviously got me involved in the series as a whole, and I feel like my love for that game has grown as I've grown to involve myself with the series as a whole, whereas this is a standalone experience, which it isn't,
So
but it should be treated as such.
Let me ask you a question then, and you can, because I don't know the answer to this, you can tell me what you think. Like, to me, God of War is a very, very good game in terms of everything it does very, very well. But there's nothing really that it does that is particularly groundbreaking, new, and something that I couldn't then reel off in other games. How does Yakuza compare to that?
Well, I mean, Yakuza 0 was the 6th game in the series by the time that it came out, and that's not including all the Japanese ones that never came over here, and some of the spin-off games as well. So that necessarily didn't reinvent the wheel at all.
I mean, let's be fair. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. God of War is the 11th God of War with the God of War name on it that's been released.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
But it is so different to the rest of them, and it's
over a period of 13 years.
Yeah, it has totally reinvigorated as well that series to a point where it was stagnant and it was dying, and it was
dead as far as I can see. And
it
was a series that I played God of War 3, and I didn't really have any interest in playing any other God of War game. So it's turned itself from a series that I thought I understood from a distance why people liked, but really had no intention of playing myself, into a series that I actively keep an eye on now.
Yeah, same. Well, though I liked it anyway, but I like it more now because of this. It's, to me, the best one that they've ever done. Oh, Jesus. See, I put it below Yakuza in my own list, so why would I put it above it now? Just to appease you when you've already said put it below it anyway. All right, fine. Yeah, we'll put it at number 3 then.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, to me, it feels like a number 3 game. Because, like I say before, it's a very, very, very good game. It's one of my favourites of the generation, obviously. But it doesn't do anything new, and it doesn't seem to... like I say, it's a very, very good game, but it doesn't evoke the passion in either of us that Yakuza's evidently evoked in you.
If you're saying this now, then, I mean, how would you rate it compared to Apex? You put it below Apex, right? So would you put it below Overwatch as well? I mean, you didn't, but...
Well, yeah, the difficulty here, like when we started this podcast, the games for my top 10 list, my 8 to 4, honestly, are interchangeable. I could switch them depending on the day and depending on my mood. They could all go above or below each other. So it really depends on how the conversation about these games go when they come up to how I feel about them.
Yeah.
I know that's not a helpful answer.
If you're looking at it now, so we're halfway through. We've got Red Dead 2, then Yakuza 0, then God of War, then Overwatch, then Apex. So if you're happy with that as it is, we'll carry on, unless you want to put God of War at number 5, I guess.
No, mate, I'm happy with that. Sure. Yakuza's your number 3 game, for goodness sakes.
Oh, yeah, I know, but I'm talking about Overwatch and Apex now. Whether you want to have Apex above God of War, but then it has to go below Overwatch, which was above.
No, I'm happy with that.
Okay.
No, I'm happy. I'm happy. Like I say, I'm happy. That's my personal list when I wrote it. If I was to redo this list right now, actually, it probably would be exactly the same.
Well, there you go. You're a man of integrity.
And maybe we'd flip Bloodborne above God of War right now, but I mean, honestly,
I think it's a disgrace you put it
my margin of those, how much I like those games. Maybe not even 8, maybe like 7 to 4. They would all get the same score in a review to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said it now. So now we're going to talk about Bloodborne.
Here it goes. The big dog. Was this the game that brought you Bloodborne? Was this the game that brought you to Souls games?
No, I think that was Dark Souls 3. Bloodborne was the game I tried before that, didn't like, fell off, got rid of, and then watched Game Grumps play Dark Souls 3 and thought, there's a reason people find this so fun, but it's really hard, because these guys were loving it. They were like cracking up laughing.
Yeah.
You'd always see clips of people shitting themselves because things would jump out or they'd fall off a ledge or something horrible would happen, and people were just loving it. And I really, really wanted the to get involved in the world of Bloodborne and Yharnam and all of that, and the aesthetics and the style of the sort of Victorian, almost sort of steampunk stylings that it had. So after I finished Dark Souls 3, I felt way more prepared to go back and do it again, and it was just a revelation the second time around. And I think I must have played it through at least 3 times now. The most recent time I tried to do it where I did every boss solo, and I think I got all the way up to the final boss of the DLC, and I can't beat him. He's just far too hard. But it was a real tough choice between this and my number one for my number one, because this and my eventual number one are 2 of my 10 ever.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So if you were to look at your top 10, of that 10, how many would make it on your 10 ever? 2?
That's a good question. That's quite tough, because there are some fantastic games on here. Things like, Overwatch. I'm pretty sure I wrote my top 10 games at some point for GoombaStomp, and Overwatch was in there as far as I can remember. In fact, Bayonetta 2 was as well, and we cut that out last time. So, who knows? There's thousands of them, right? But Bloodborne that's not going anywhere. In terms of the From Software games, this is, for me, the perfect one that they've made. I don't think they'll ever better this in terms of everything, the world building, the monster design, atmosphere, the way the combat works with the guns that they use as just sort of a parrying mechanic, the trick weapons, everything about this game in terms of the formula that they have built, that everybody who's into the Dark Souls, Soulsborne, whatever, loves. To me, this is the absolute apex of that, and it's better than all the Dark Souls. It's better than Sekiro, and those games are all games that I really, really like. I don't really know what to say about Bloodborne too much, other than it's so entrenched within that world and that type of game that they're so almost exclusive to themselves in the way that they play and how they work with shortcuts and losing all your souls and then having to go back and get them again and all of that stuff. Enemies come back every time you rest. All that stuff that's been copied 1,000 times since in all these Souls-like games. It's become a genre of its own. It's kind of hard to say something new about it at this point, but I just think Bloodborne is so tightly and perfectly built to be this blistering action game that at first, as it was for me, felt really, really like I had a really high barrier of entry. It was really difficult for me to get my head around it. It felt almost like it was made in a way that was bad. I kind of felt like it wasn't a good action game, because you're expecting to play a game like that and it be God of War, the originals, or Devil May Cry, or Bayonetta, or something like that. And you felt like, because the movement was actually quite a lot more restrictive, that it just felt wrong. It didn't feel like it worked. But once you understand why they made those choices and how actually that makes the challenge what it is, it's just, I don't know how you make an action game that feels better than that.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, bear in mind, I've loved this game. I platinumed it, so I evidently did.
We had a great time playing this co-op as well.
Yeah, I think for me, these games, I don't know. Like I always feel like if you're I'm really into Dark Souls, like I'm about to blaspheme, but I don't care. This is how I enjoy playing it. But for me, I enjoy playing it co-op. That's how I enjoyed it. I think I did a lot of it solo. But I think the reason it's not up the pinnacle of these lists for me is that I still never got past the point where these games stop being stressful. So I have to be in the mood for them, and I have to be ready for it. And even if I'm not playing co-op, I almost like to have someone on to chat to while I'm playing, because it diffuses the tension and it diffuses the anxiety that these games for some reason just bring upon me. But when this game is good, it makes you feel like a god. When you get through a boss that without dying, like if you one shot a boss that your mates have been finding really tough, you feel like an absolute god strutting out of there with all your souls as you scamper off with your tails between your legs to clash in your souls before your, what are they called in this game? Are they still called souls?
Blood Echoes, I think.
Blood Echoes, before that you get killed and lose them all. But losing it's one of these things though, like when actually it boils down to like it stresses me out when I lose Blood Echoes, but that's part of the game, and you just have to get over it. It got to the point where you were losing like 100,000.
Yeah, there's
which
always
if you had
more.
said, and what's your thinking about when you get invaded? I guess that's just part of the game as well. But sometimes they're so stressful that I just want them to go away and let me play the game.
Yeah, so it can be worse on other games because the one big negative of Bloodborne is that for some reason they totally ripped up the invasion mechanics that they'd had in previous games, or maybe they refined it in Dark Souls 3, which came afterwards. I can't remember, but the way that you do co-op is you have to ring that bell, and you have to just hope you're on the same server as your mate who's ringing. It's really stupid. But yeah, invasions can be an absolute pain in the arse. But I found that they were a lot worse when we were playing Dark Souls 3 than they were in this.
Okay.
I completely understand what you're saying about how stressful it can get or whatever. And I still feel that way as well, even if I was to play it again now, which I do intend to do at some point. I think everyone's waiting for them to try and make it 60 FPS on PS5, Xbox Series X, and then everyone's going to jump straight back into this again.
Jump straight back into it.
Because they're never going to make a sequel to it, because they just can't. It doesn't work. The way that they've made... The way that the game explains itself, and the way that you are the hunter who has to go back to the dream, and then you end up taking over that at the end, unless you're just playing a new hunter that's going to go fight yourself again. It just doesn't make sense. And you've defeated the whole thing with the eyes, give me eyes, and the moon god and all that kind of stuff. So it feels like as a standalone, tightly sort of wrapped up story, it can't go anywhere else. So
it is, and I kind of want to second what you said in terms of like setting. It oozes style and it oozes atmosphere in a way that most games don't. It just sort of throws itself into this thing whole hog, and that you can actually feel like you're walking down these dark, dingy. What's the author that I'm blanking on again?
What, Lovecraft?
Yeah, Lovecraftian sort of world, and it's eerie, and it's like you're talking about it being the ultimate action game. I'd argue that you could also make a case for it being a really, really high quality horror game as well, because it is scary. Not knowing what's round the next corner, not knowing what you're coming up against, not knowing even when you come up against it what they're going to do to you. It's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
In a way that most games don't do authentically. Most games try and manufacture it with a jump scare or by absolutely doing you over. Whereas this game, if you lose, you've just not learned what you need to learn yet.
Yeah,
I guess.
And repeated attempts at the same sort of part of the game will give you even more added tension, because you actually know what's coming at this point. But that constant sense of dread that you have whilst playing the entire experience from start to finish. Every corner could contain something horrible that could kill you and ruin all your progress. Every boss is probably going to be some giant behemoth that's going to ruin you.
Absolutely.
The bosses in this game are outstanding. They're the best FROMs ever made.
You've said something that actually made me think, and it's absolutely fascinating how this game manages to change. So like it is that eerie, scary, foreboding game when you're going into a new area, and then it becomes about learning what the game wants you to do and trying to figure it out, almost like a puzzle game. And then it's about execution and quick reactions and knowing what to do when you need to do it. And that's... most games don't do those three disparate things in such an organic way that this game does.
Yeah, I think I'm stealing a thought from somebody I must have seen on YouTube talking about this, but the point that you play a lot of games that people will revere for their world building and their setting and whatever, but almost all games like that, you don't learn and appreciate the game world like you do with a From Software game, because as you say, you have to figure out its intricacies and its nooks and crannies and where everything is, and you have to continually try and perfect the run that you're going to make through all these obstacles, and you're playing it over and over again so many times that you can just map it in your head by the end, and that can build this appreciation of a world that as well is incredibly varied. This game on the surface looks like it's going to be a werewolf shooting game set in Victorian England, but you also then end up going to this crazy sort of haunted castle, and then you're involved in all this Lovecraft shit towards the end, where you're fighting aliens in clock towers and beings that are blue beings and all this kind of stuff. It kind of throws you around loads of different settings in a way that kind of felt reminiscent of when Resident Evil 4 did that back on the GameCube, where it suddenly switched you around from a village in Spain to this big castle full of all these weird monks, and then you're off in sewers and facilities and shit.
To try and offer a bit of balance, maybe the reasons that it wouldn't hit the upper echelons in my own personal list is that its biggest strength in some ways is almost, for me personally, it's one of its biggest weaknesses in that I want to feel like I've bested the game through skill, not because I've memorised the mechanic that it wants me to memorise. On occasions, I feel like Bloodborne was just about memorising boss patterns and then executing on it.
That's potentially a good point. I would counter that maybe with the fact that you can respec a character every time you start the game and play a different build, so that you can then learn a different technique to suit your style. Might mean that there are numerous ways to tackle these obstacles. But if you watch a speed run, everyone's going to be doing the same thing. They're all going to be putting bolt paper on the dex weapons and hitting them all with electricity and killing them really, really quickly. So
yeah,
there is that too. But for me, this is one. So I don't know what to do, because I don't think it is for you.
No, it's not number one for me. I'm trying to. So like obviously, if this list absolutely is not objective. But so if we look at it emotionally, Red Dead is a better game. But then it's not for you. So then, makes me think, like, objectively, what's it doing? What does it do as a game? What does it bring to the table? Can it bring a hand to the table that makes it more of a special game than Red Dead Redemption 2? I'm trying to think, like, I'm not sure. This is a really tough one, because I both agree with all your arguments, but I still think Red Dead Redemption 2 is a better game. But again, this isn't a David list, so perhaps on balance, Bloodborne does come out better because we both like it. So
yeah, I think that's obviously going to carry some weight. But at the moment, we've got two games at 1 and 2 that only one of us likes each, and then the games we both like are all underneath it.
I think at the end of the day, we've both said ad nauseum or we will have by the end of the list, what we care about in a game and what our best games. Like, Red Dead's had its day. I've said my piece on it, and I've been quite clear about that. So if we put Bloodborne in at number 1, I'm happy to do that, and I could feel good about that too, because it is the pinnacle of a genre that hasn't been bested yet, and it went in a direction that was different from every other one of the From Software games, and I feel like every game since has been racing to copy it. And my next favourite From game is Dark Souls 3, which I liked a great deal, but I only really liked it when I got that ring that allowed me to play it like a Bloodborne.
Oh yeah. We didn't even talk about the fact that they switched up the way you're supposed to play from all the Dark Souls games with the...
Exactly. So let's put it in at number 1. Let's rip this Band-Aid off quick. Leave me to cry on my own, and let's move on. What's the next game you want to talk about, Alex?
Let's talk about Zelda.
Yeah, let's do it. This is a mixed one for me, in that it is an absolutely fantastic game. Again, like when we were talking about Madonna before, it completely reinvented a series, and in a way that allowed it to go back to its roots in a small, odd kind of way. So I remember listening to, and I'm now blanking on his name, but the guy that made Spelunky was talking about playing games with his dad, and I think it was a no-clip video that I watched.
Probably.
And he was talking about playing games with his dad as a kid, and playing games like Zelda that were just that created a world that you could exist in and allowed you to explore and discover secrets that you didn't know were there. And he was sitting on the floor while his dad was playing, drawing maps, trying to mark down where secret locations were. And
that's great.
Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild did that in a way that made it feel modern and new and rewarding. It brought exploration and discovery back to the forefront of a series that I think had, perhaps for me at least, lost its way a little bit.
Yeah.
In that regard, there's obviously fantastic Zelda games, but they didn't quite have, for me at least, didn't have quite the same focus on this. They were much more directed affairs than this one is.
Yeah, absolutely. Which can almost be felt by the fact that this game really didn't put a lot of emphasis on story at all. Miyamoto's original Zelda game was based around, as you say, him running around in fields and things when he was a kid in Japan, and then that's what he wanted to make this sense of adventure in the game. So Aonuma, the now director of the series, clearly made that choice to bring that style back, because compared to other games that it's had before, the way it was. I mean, there's hardly any dungeons in it for one thing. It's all about the world is the dungeon, and it's constantly the threat, and there are lots of mini things within it. It's quite hard to place this one for me because of all the games here, I would say it's probably up there with the most objectively fun games, and it has a sense of fun
unless
about
it's
it.
raining and you want to climb a hill.
Well, that's the other point, is that it has probably the most, not faults, but missteps that I don't know why are in there of all these games.
The weapon degradation and the
stamina,
the stamina thing, that when you're climbing and it starts to rain, they never fixed. And I always assumed that I'll find some sort of boot that will allow me to climb in the rain, but it just never happened.
Yeah.
Which is just odd. It's an odd artificial way to sort of extend, because to the point that if you were climbing a mountain and it started raining, you just have to sort of sit and wait at the bottom until it stopped.
Yeah, and that's just, nobody's got time. I mean, literally, you don't have time for that.
No.
There's too much other things you could be doing instead of waiting for the rain to stop in a Zelda game. That's ludicrous.
Yeah.
And as I said, they took a whether it's a deliberate focus away from the story or just a lack of an ability to tell a good story in this universe, I don't know, but the story is poor because it's the same thing it always was. It's the princess is in trouble, you are Link, here's Ganon, go kill him. You can do it you can do it from the beginning of the game. You can just go straight up and kill Ganon and it's over if you've got the skills. So there are elements to this game that are, they are complaints that I have, and I don't really have too many complaints about the ones I've necessarily picked. Obviously, some of the ones you've picked, I would have my complaints about them, but there's just something about the way that this is focused on its idea and its desire to be this exploration of a world and your attachment to it that makes it almost unlike everything else we've got here. The fact that you can just kind of glide around or skate down a hill on your shield, and all of the sort of motion controls that they added in with all the dungeons and the puzzles are all fantastic. It's got so many amazing things about it, but there are just some things holding it back where I can't even really place it in the Zelda ranking, which I guess we may do someday, but you'd have to play a lot of Zelda games to do that. But
a hell of a lot, yeah.
Yeah, but going back and playing the older Zelda games, they all have their faults too, and they don't hold up necessarily all that well anymore because you're going back such a long way. Whereas this feels the best to play and was fantastic in terms of its scope, but it also had things in it that I just wish weren't there, and that state, I just don't know where to put it.
I feel free. This is maybe a bit of a I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I don't want this to come across in the wrong way. But in a way, this game gave me a bit of hope for the Japanese video game industry, because I feel like when we made this podcast 10 years ago, the Japanese video game industry was in a difficult spot in that it was the pinnacle of video game design, and where everybody looked to make games. And then over the years, kind of chiefly throughout the Xbox 360 generation, it became an industry that was quite stale and was unable to sort of move outside and look beyond its box. Whereas this game, yes, they've done it actually, because we've got 4 Japanese games on this list, so obviously it's come out the other side.
Yeah.
But this game lacked the arrogance that I often and still do accuse Nintendo of having, and sit and thinking we're Nintendo, we're the best, we know how to do it. There's quite clear and obvious inspiration taken from other games. You can see Skyrim in this game, you can see Minecraft in this game, I can even see bits of Monster Hunter in this game. So they've obviously gone outside and looked at
Absolutely.
other games and other genres and thought, what do these games do well? How can we take this to our probably second biggest franchise, would you say? Third if you count Pokemon.
Yeah.
One of our biggest franchises, one of our flagship franchises. How can we take it and apply it so that it works and makes an exciting new product? And I think I repeat this whenever a Zelda game comes up. But was it Who was it? Is it Miyamoto that said the great thing about having established IPs like Zelda and Mario is that they allow you to make different games and take risks in a way that a completely new IP wouldn't let you do. And
I guess that's true.
That's exactly what this is.
It could go the opposite way, I guess, can't it? Couldn't it?
Often does, yeah.
Yeah. But that's true, and there are a lot of Zelda games, other than maybe the two on the N64, which feel quite similar because they're in the same engine. But they do, and same with Mario, as we said last episode. They basically try and almost reinvent what Zelda means and is every time they bring one new one of these out.
Absolutely, and I'm keen to give it its due in that regard, because we spent a lot of time talking about, or I did at least, Red Dead Redemption 2 creating a world, and The Witcher 3. No, we've not got to that yet. God of War reinventing itself and doing something dangerous and something brave and stepping outside its wheelhouse to create a new product and take some risks. And this game is really unlike any other Zelda game that I would say, other than bringing back the focus to exploration. But it's a different exploration. It's a different sort of discovery than the other games had, where you just had to throw bombs at walls until a hole appeared, really.
Yeah, this one was they did some really good stuff with the exploration in this game. Climbing the towers felt like it was going to go down an alley that you don't want it to, with the whole Ubisoftification of it. But the fact that it didn't bring things up on your map and you just had to actually look through a telescope and see things and then go over there.
I just wish Nintendo Online was better for party chat, so I could have chatted to you while I was playing.
Yeah, I wish a lot of things about Nintendo was better. I wish it didn't run like shit when it first came out. I wish it was on a console that was more powerful than it is, but it's easily the most idealistic game on this list, where you can clearly see the intentions, and they wanted everyone to have the same experience of fun and adventure, whereas the other games you can get different things out of it. But this one, I feel like, because it took away all the sort of extracurricular fluff that a lot of games will have, it's not got to really focus on story. It's, as you say, it's not a linear game. There are so many ways to tackle so many different parts of it in terms of, the combat. You can take the enemy's weapons, you can throw bombs, you can use all your little magic tricks off of your Sheikah slate or whatever it was. You can slide down and kill them that way. You can attach them balloons to them and make them fly off. And this, they clearly, it just encapsulates that sense of wonder and fun. And even with its flaws, it's still a fantastic game. But I think because of those flaws, when it's now coming time to place it, maybe it goes at the bottom.
I think it's the new number 7 of the top 10 games of the generation so far.
I feel they're so close, I think, to being able to make the perfect Zelda game, because it's a franchise I've loved for so long, and I've adored them from the first one I ever played, which must have been Ocarina of Time. I still love that game. It's still one of my favourites ever. But right now, what would I rather go back and play? Ocarina of Time again, or Breath of the Wild for only a second time? I'd want to go and play Breath of the Wild again. So
100%, yeah.
If they could make that, give me a more compelling reason to want to keep playing it, take out the little niggly weird decisions that they made that nobody understands why they made them, I feel like they could make one of the best video games of all time. It's just this one felt like a huge step, but not the full step that it needed to be.
Yeah.
So we'll put that at number 7.
Okay, next up, let's go for The Last of Us 2. Because this is a game that I'm just going to have to talk about for a while, because you didn't play it, did you?
Yes, you are, yeah.
Do you want to tell me why you didn't play it first, and then it might give me some direction to chat about?
I 100% was hooked in by the discourse around this game of it apparently, and I can't say for definite, but this is what I heard and how I just made my decision on whether I was going to play it or not. It was that it felt and played very, very similarly to the first one, but this time around the narrative was that it was trying to almost force down your throat that killing people and violence is really bad and we shouldn't do it, but continually forced you to commit violent acts throughout the entire game. I don't care about what the story beats were. I don't care about who kills Joel or whatever, or what kind of gender they are. I don't care about any of that. I just kind of felt like that would get tiresome very quickly if that is what's actually going to happen. And it's constantly going to do that whole Lara Croft Tomb Raider thing of, I can't believe I've killed these people. And then in the next set piece, you're killing 50. And you're having a right old laugh while you're doing it. It felt like it was just going to be really pretentious and grating, and I wouldn't be able to enjoy it because I felt the first one was so perfect in the narrative that it told and the characters that it built that I didn't want to spoil that like I kind of did with Doom Eternal. So that's why I stayed away from it. But if you can give me a reason why I should definitely be playing this and why that is overblown and wrong, go for it.
You're not necessarily wrong, unfortunately. I think, like, as much as I love Naughty Dog and I think they make stellar games, I do feel like this is my personal feeling is they do appear to have strayed into the pretentious category in which they very much believe their own hype. And
yeah,
I watched the developers talk about the original Last of Us. They were playing through it and talking about it, and I just see my beard and checked shirt growing onto my skin as I was listening to them speak. And I was just like, yeah, like I'm glad you take these things seriously, because it's about time people did. Not that they haven't for a long time now. So there is people and there is room for this. I think my reticence coming up to it is that I didn't think this game was necessary. I feel like The Last of Us 1 was a complete story in its own right, and it's the same argument we would have had with Uncharted 4, in that, like, before it came out and before we played it, I actually didn't see any need for it, and there was no use for this game. Like, why does it exist? It exists purely because you can think you can sell another game out of it.
Yeah.
And I do think that's where it came from, but ultimately what they have is a product that is, in terms of engagement and character engagement and storyline, I would say it's a bit weaker than the first Last of Us, but in terms of world building, going back to the Red Dead Redemption 2 argument, it is a true, and I don't say this lightly, it is a true masterpiece in terms of world design. This game will take you about 30 hours to complete, and I honestly, if I'm honest, and this is probably what's going to stop it really climbing the list, is it feels like it's about 10 hours too long. I was ready for it to be done a good while before it finished, but then when I was finished the game and I sat back and thought about each part of the game, I was like, right, it's too long, cut bits out. I actually really struggled to find aspects of the game that I would cut, and it's a weird position for the game to be in that it feels bloated, but actually when you think about it, it is a very tight and cohesive experience. I guess, like, spoilers are on the table now, so basically what happens is you play the first half of the game as Ellie, and you play the first, and Joel gets killed, and you spend the first half of the game looking for her killer to find him, and then you find her, and then what it does is it does a sort of rewind back, and you play as the killer, and you play as her life after she got back, and you get to know her, you get to know her, the other characters, you get to know the life that she's made for herself, and against my better judgment, all it is a revenge story, and it's about two people that have just been so utterly consumed by their need for revenge that they stop to live. And it's a shame, because I liked Ellie in The Last of Us 1. By the end of The Last of Us 2, I didn't like Ellie at all. I thought she was quite a horrible character. She's quite
Do you
a
think
horrible.
it wanted you to feel that way?
I suspect it did, because the other character that you play a lot of, she sort of sees the error in her ways, and she brings herself in some way out of the nastiness and rage-consumed existence she had, to allow, like, she obviously killed Joel, so she didn't do that good a job of it, but she let Ellie came along and killed all her friends, and she tried to let Ellie walk away, and even after everything at the end, you can't let her, to the point that you have a fight which is sort of a boss battle at the end of the game, where these two characters have a fight, and you fight as Ellie. And I just wanted to twice I tried to let the game just let me die, because I was like, I don't think Ellie should live in this scenario. She's not had a good time. She's not covered herself in glory. She built a life for herself and then abandoned it to go on some sort of revenge recon mission across the country. But I feel like I've just been bashing this game now. But at the end of the day, what happened was I look for a game. If it's not a multiplayer game I can play with my friends, I'll look for a game that I can get lost in the story, which is going to be coming up again in a couple games' time, probably.
Yeah.
And I got really, really attached to half of the characters in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And what actually I got attached to at the end of the day was, again, the world. There's not a game that... Red Dead Redemption 2 does a good job of creating what you imagine a Western to be. The Last of Us creates a truly desolate, lonely, eerie place that feels like a real city just without people in it, and it is so lovingly crafted. And, like, one thing that I liked about Well, I like Tomb Raider, the new sort of trilogy of Tomb Raiders, but one thing that constantly brought me out of it was that it was an open world game, but an open world game that actually, when you looked at it, was just a long corridor. It was level based, but this game is that as well. But even if you know it and you start trying to sort of prod at the edges to try and find where the game ends and the sort of the skybox starts, it is so dense that it's difficult to find. And it got to the point that I was running through this city, and it genuinely did feel like I was just picking my route. I'm sure the game was directing me, absolutely sure of it, but it wasn't doing the Uncharted thing where it stuck yellow things in a block where you had to climb up. Yeah. Or it didn't do the Tomb Raider thing where actually it was just a narrow corridor that looked like it was a forest, but really you were all walking down the same path. This actually felt like they had created a block on a city, and you just had to get to the other side, and how you did it really was up to you. And it does the same thing that God of War does, in that it makes the fighting feel really awful.
It looks it from what I've seen,
yeah. Like God of War doesn't make it feel awful, but like the fighting, you do it, but like it is brutal. Like some things Ellie does, and you come out of it almost with like, should I have PTSD after that? That was harrowing. But there was bits that took me out of it. Like I like it. It does feel pretentious. Ellie really is not a redeemable character.
I feel like that's what they were doing with Joel in the beginning.
Yeah,
in the first game.
They weren't. They absolutely did. But I still liked Joel.
Yeah, I think we all did for some reason.
I didn't like Ellie at the end. She was just a horrible person. But she gets her comeuppance. But yeah, it is, you can, like, I was playing it, and then I think I played Uncharted 4 right after it.
Okay.
It's very much a Naughty Dog game, and I feel like they have, much like Ubisoft at this point, you know how a Naughty Dog game's going to feel in control.
Yeah.
And it was just a more refined version of 4. You could see where they went from The Last of Us to Uncharted 4, and then Uncharted 4 to The Last of Us 2, which is fine. They make that type of game really, really well.
They do.
So it's a narrative-driven, fun game that is utterly brutal, but did want to ram its message down my throat until I was under no illusion as to what it was.
But it obviously hasn't spoiled anything too much for you, because it's in your top 10. It was a lot higher than I thought it was going to as well. You put it at number 3 for yourself, so you know clearly.
I genuinely spent the first third of this game. It sort of did the same thing that Life is Strange, in that I was just played the first third of the game thinking, right, I need to get through this just to see it.
And you said that to me, I remember. And this is what surprised me when I saw this. I remember thinking, he said he was kind of like, he couldn't get himself motivated to carry on with it. And then all of a sudden, it's number 3 in the generation. And
yeah, it's so bleak and so dense and so heavy on you when you're playing.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to be cliche, but it could just be it was about a pandemic in a pandemic. So
yeah, maybe
there could have been a slight part of that, but it is so bleak and so oppressive. But it sort of won me over against its will. I went from thinking this is not liking this, or thinking this is fine, but just a regurgitation of another Naughty Dog game, to thinking this is still going, this is too long, to then being brought back into it. I think ultimately that's why it's not going to get near the top of this list, I think, for the overall list, because it spoke to me, but I can see, same with Zelda, it spoke to me personally, but I can see problems with it.
Sure. So where should it go?
To be honest, I think it goes in at number 8 after that chat. I spent more time slagging it off than I did being positive about it. So it's my personal number 3, but I think it's a number 8 game.
Okay, which means we have 2 games left to talk about. And at the moment we have, in order of 1st to 8th, Bloodborne, Red Dead 2, Yakuza 0, God of War, Overwatch, Apex Legends, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and The Last of Us 2. Which means we have 2 more games to talk about, and I guess if we're going to end on a high, we should talk about Resident Evil 2 first of all.
Yes.
You've played this one, right?
Resident Evil 2, yes.
Yes.
This is the definitive way of how I think remakes should go.
Oh,
they take what people loved about the old games, or the old game, and then added to it and tweaked it to bring it up and feel like a modern game. We've got the upcoming Mass Effect remasters coming out.
Yeah.
And I'm very much worried that these are just going to be farted out slightly touched up, like pig and lipstick versions of the old games. But this very much wasn't that. This was a lovingly handcrafted recreation of a lovingly handcrafted recreated game. Was it a remake of a remake, technically?
No.
Was it a remake of the GameCube, or was it a remake of the PS?
No, that was the first one they remade on the GameCube. Which, again, it was incredible and a really good example of that the first time round as well. I think what you need to, or what you can use to frame how good this game is Resident Evil 3 Remake, and how different it can go if the time or the... Obviously, they didn't spend as much time on Resident Evil 3 because it's built in the same engine, so they clearly just, they already had a lot of the stuff there to use and just went and did farted out a shorter version. But they cut things out of Resident Evil 3 that people wanted to be in it. It's not the full game. Nemesis never really felt like as much of a threat as he did in the first game. There was a lot of stylistic choices they made with Resident Evil 3 that felt wrong, whereas there's absolutely nothing in the Resident Evil 2 remake that feels that way. Everything about what they did for Resident Evil 2 Remake feels spot on, and it feels... Yep. Obviously, it doesn't feel like how you thought Resident Evil 2 played if you look back in your mind. It's a totally different experience. Mm-hmm. But it evokes so much of the first game well enough, whilst modernising it, that you can get lost in the experience of, this is why I love Resident Evil 2 so much, even though it's nothing like it. Yeah. It's a culmination of all of the things that have been added to Resident Evil as a franchise since its existence began in whatever it was, 96. It plays the best. It has easily the best sort of atmosphere to it. The lighting and the mood and the tension around it is... They've never got close to that before. Maybe Resident Evil 4 was the first one that kind of threw that at us because you suddenly had these enemies running towards you and you had the over-the-shoulder shot and a dude's going to lob your head off with a chainsaw in a minute and all this kind of stuff. But Resident Evil 2 has taken what is effectively a pretty schlocky B-movie zombie game that had tension in it because of the fact that the controls were really bad and the camera angles made it on purpose so you couldn't see stuff around the corner, into such a brilliantly made horror game that is way up there with the best ever, that it's almost unbelievable that they were able to transform a game that isn't really scary, isn't really that sort of tense. It's just kind of a cool zombie game from the 90s, and they've made it into this really terrifying game that I know people... A friend of mine who's played Resident Evil 2 knows it like the back of his hand, can't bring himself to play this. I mean, he's a complete coward, but there's something about the way this game is different enough in that way. They've modernized it so perfectly that he's clearly scared of it before he's even touched it. He's not prepared for it, even though he should be absolutely prepared for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic remake that I remember playing through the sort of remaster of the first Resident Evil. Remember that came out a few years ago, and it just annoyed me.
That's the remake. I remember that now. Sorry, they brought that out on Xbox.
That's the remake of the remake, is it?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
That's where I was getting that from. That game wasn't quite on the level of what this one is. I remember I played through it, but I ended up just sitting with a guide open because I didn't find the puzzles fun. They were obtuse in a way that were just annoying, whereas this one had a bit more cohesion to it, and it felt familiar but new at the same time, and it brought back the scariness of the zombies that I think hasn't really been around in a while. Eventually the Resident Evil ones just became a bit schlocky, didn't they? But
yeah, they're so well programmed the way that they're kind of really agile, but not intentionally. They kind of flop out of the way or duck by accident because they're falling over, and they're really hard to shoot, but not because they've got any kind of mentality behind what they're doing. It's really expertly done.
What's the big guy called again?
Mr. X.
Yeah, Mr. X. He wasn't in the first one, was he?
He was in the B campaign. So say you play the game with Claire, if you play Leon after that, then he's in that one.
Oh, right, okay. Because I was going to say I never encountered him when I played it on PS1 back in the 90s. So I must have just played through it once. In fact, I don't even think I got right through it. But yeah, he's introduced into the game at the perfect moment because
Yeah.
it's just as you start to feel quite confident moving
Yeah.
around the mansion, and then this thing arrives and becomes utterly terrifying, and you're
Yeah.
like creeping out of doors looking for him,
Yeah.
and then you get used to him just as you leave, which is perfect timing again. It's just a well crafted experience that knows when to bring things in and take things out. And then when I remember got to the point in the mansion where I was used to him, so I was just sort of running around him, staying out his way. But then they take you out of the mansion, and then when they reintroduce him again, he's back to being an absolute powerhouse because you can't get away from him so much.
Yeah.
Where they're putting him, they're putting you in narrow corridors, they're putting you in areas that you have to deal with him. So they use him very, very well. He's and I would actually be interested to go back and have a look at him on the PS1 and see how he feels and looks.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I remember watching a lot about this game, so he's always existing. He's like the dragons in Skyrim in that he never despawns.
Yeah,
Like
you can hear him
Alien
stomping the
Isolation.
whole fucking
Yeah.
time.
Alien Isolation is an example of a game where they have the sort of creeping enemy that you want to hide from, but then it'll despawn and can respawn in different places, whereas Mr. X is always in the game world, which I think
that's cool.
It's a nice touch that makes him feel a bit more dangerous and feel like you can try and outthink him in a way. That the game's not just going to go, yeah, here he is, popping out of a closet. He might pop out of the closet, but he put himself there.
And that's what Resident Evil 3 does. And that's why everyone was so confused by Nemesis in Resident Evil 3 being so on rails and scripted compared to the genius behind how Mr. X is handled in this one.
Yeah.
It's it feels like a game that was crafted by all the fans put together, but it wasn't. It was just a group of younger guys at Capcom who wanted to do this, and their intentions behind wanting to do it and the execution of that ideal is so perfect that there's just not a single thing I can complain about. It is exactly what I wanted, and I didn't know. You never would know what you want, but when you hear, oh, they're going to make Resident Evil 2 again and it's going to be over the shoulder, kind of like Resident Evil 4, you have all these ideals of what you want it to feel like and how it should be, and how the zombies have got to be scary this time, and the atmosphere's got to go back to being scary, and it can't just be an action game. They didn't put a single foot wrong. And for a game that I loved as much as that in the first place, for a series that's one of my favorites ever, this was just glorious. And it's such a shame that they ruined it with 3, but as I said, that's a way of measuring just how well done this was and how reverential and clever it was of them to make it the way they did.
Where do you think it sits? This is going to be I feel like we've probably been more positive about this game than we have been about a lot of the other games. But
I suppose when a game does one or two things so brilliantly, then you're going to pick faults with other things because I suppose
they're more obvious.
Yeah. Whereas this one, I just can't think of anything it did wrong. That even the voice acting was great. The script was pretty good. It wasn't campy or stupid or anything, which was fine. That's what Resident Evil is. But they played this one pretty straight, and they played it really, really well. Now I put this at number 7 when I did it, but. I prefer it to God of War, but I don't know if you'd want it that high. I prefer it to Yakuza 0, I think.
How would you feel about it going ahead of Overwatch?
Okay, yeah.
Could you live with that?
Yeah, I could live with that.
See, like, I'm looking at these other games, and like, I guess, like, to try and make an argument against it climbing the list further. So, like, say for example, I don't know, take Red Dead Redemption 2. It's like it'll have absolute 10 moments, and then it'll have moments that bring you out of it, and maybe like a 6 or a 5, and then it'll go up to a 10, and then like a 9, then an 8, then a 7, then a 6. Whereas Resident Evil for me is a solid 8 the whole way through.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the highs, but it also doesn't have the lows, which is both good and bad, I guess. But yeah, okay, if we're happy with it in there.
Yeah. Like I said, a lot of it comes down to your association and your love for the franchise beforehand. So.
Yeah, so you had a pre-built attachment to the franchise that I probably don't have.
Yeah, and I think if you take it into the context of any type of entertainment media that you've experienced in your life before, and then somebody else has come along and done something to that in not either in a different medium completely or a modernized version of it, I can think of absolutely nothing that's made me feel the way that this did, where I just sat back and almost felt relieved and just thought, wow, they didn't fuck anything up. This is so good. It's so many things are not like that. Almost anything. You know, the modern versions of things like Ghostbusters, Total Recall, Robocop, dog shit. Scott Pilgrim the movie, nowhere near as good as the books. Harry Potter's probably not as good as the books. Lord of the all of that stuff.
Not. Yeah.
And that's what's carried this to be one of my favourite games. This might be in my top 10 ever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right, we've got one more, and then we can all go to bed.
Then we can all go. It's a big one though. It's The Witcher 3. I mean, should we warn people that both of us have got Witcher tattoos after playing this
you could
game?
warn people about pretty much that for
Any
every
game
single
for you.
game. Yeah, apart from Yakuza, because I mean, that's they are a criminal organisation at the end of the day.
And you might want to go to Japan at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe refrain from getting Yakuza across your forehead.
Yeah, yeah. Get my whole back done and just walk around the streets with my shirt off.
Yeah. This is a game that, I mean, obviously Cyberpunk has its own problems, but I think even problems aside, the big dark shadow of The Witcher 3 is still looming over that game. It was such a what's the something after the Lord Mayor's show? What's that saying?
I think it is just after the Lord Mayor's show.
Yeah, it's just such a like I don't know. I'm Manchester United post Alex Ferguson. Was it ever going to be? Was it ever going to go well? This was just such a high. This game propelled CD Projekt Red into like the upper echelons of game designers.
It's quite funny, really, isn't it? Because everyone thinks they're this great developer, but this is really the only good game they've ever made.
Yeah,
or great.
Like
game,
The Witcher 1 was a bit of a dog's breakfast. The Witcher 2 I liked, but it was very much a traditional PC RPG game that didn't want to hold your hand. And then The Witcher 3 just sort of straddled the action versus RPG fence in a way that was absolutely compelling. And it's a shame that the world is the best thing about this game, in that the politics and the intrigue and the backstabbing and you feel like you're a part of that, and because you get to make dialogue choices, I suppose you feel like you've got sway over what happens. Yeah,
there's so many characters in it that you can actually feel emotional around.
Yeah.
One way or the other. I really hate this guy. Oh, this guy's the man. I really like this woman. I want to choose her. That is almost unparalleled for me. I don't think any game's made me feel that way about that many characters.
No, and it's animated well, and it's voice acted well, and it's shot well in a way that, like, too often in games where there's romance scenes, they are so awkward and so bad.
Yeah.
But this one's done really well, and it's tasteful, and it's interesting, and it's fun in a way that a lot of games miss the mark quite a lot. I remember like having to go for walks to try and decide what choices I was going to make between like love interests, because it's like, oh, I like these characters, both of them, so much.
Yeah.
It's not usually when in games like this there's a clear decision, but that's what I like about this game, in that everything in it is a grey area. There's no clear cut good bad choice. Everything is so well constructed in the politics, in the world, and even when you're walking through camps and speaking to people that you discover that are basically just refugees because they've had their homes destroyed in a war, like they feel like citizens just wanting to live a life that are having like another fight thrust upon them, and you're sort of trying to parse through and sift through that, and because of the character, you often become the butt of many of their frustrations because they decided they don't like you.
Yeah.
But that still makes the game world feel real. There's no like, oh, this is the nice people zone, this is the bad people zone. It's all dark and muddy and complicated, and everything top to bottom with it is so well crafted, and it feels and plays well as well. There's not many bugs that I can think of.
There were. I think it was a bit wonky at first, but it was definitely sorted it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it that you like about The Witcher? I realise I've just been talking about the world for a while because that seems to be my default go-to today.
I love the place that you have in the world as well, because, I mean, maybe not traditionally, but a lot of the bigger open world games of this ilk, like Skyrim for one, will cast you as a character you get to design yourself, and you are playing the role that you want. Whereas in this game, you are playing the role of Geralt. And I had never played a Witcher game before this. And for me to become so enamored with him and enjoy being him in this world as much as I did shows how strong a character and how well written he was. And that comes along with, as well, the interactions that people are going to have with him and their interpretations of what he is and what he does.
Yeah.
And his story and how compelling it was is what carries this game through in a way that character creation games can't, because you have to embody this guy as Geralt, and then you try and shape him the way you feel is best. But, I failed the romance thing, as you said, because there was no clear point where I knew that I was going to cut myself off from one woman or the other, and I ended up getting blue-balled by the both of them, thinking I was going to get a three-way going. And as you say, the combat in it, I think people do have some issues with the combat, but I never did. I think they think it's a bit floaty or something, but fighting the monsters was the strategy you could put behind your build-up. I used to love that shit, when you could put all your oils on and getting your runes sorted out and the right type of weapon. And
the first time you turn up, and I think the first time I noticed it in The Witcher 3 is when you do that side mission where this man has gone missing as well as his wife, and it turns out like the girl that's looking for him is his like secret lover, and she knows that he's actually a werewolf and seems to have killed his own wife, or she put his wife in the position that he would kill her.
Yeah.
And then you go into not only is it an absolutely fascinating story, which it is, but that if you don't get your oils right and you don't figure out what you're going to fight before you go to fight it, that thing will mess you up.
Yeah.
Like, you have to know that you have to have used your bestiary to know that you're coming up against a werewolf by checking out the clues, and you have to have gone and oiled your blade up and taken the right potions, because when you go in there, if you don't know what you're going up against and then you're also not ready for it, you're in trouble. And I think that's another thing. The other two things that this game does excellently well is the side missions. Is unlike anything else on this list, in that every side mission feels important, and it feels handcrafted, and it has a start, a middle, and an end in a way that most side missions don't. None of it feels frivolous. It all feels necessary and interesting in a way that makes you want to go and do it.
Yeah, even if the tasks you're performing within those stories is slightly repetitive, the beats of that side story are going to be so wildly different and well written that it's not going to matter. Just now, when you started telling the story of the werewolf guy, I thought you were going to start talking about the dude who doesn't he think his wife's missing or something, but she ends up being like a plague maiden and she's wrecked this entire town or whatever. Yeah,
and you can choose whether to send him back to her or go and deal with it. Because I think in my game, it's like this woman that's just got a massive tongue coming out her face. Yeah. He kisses her and then she just kills him. That's it.
Remember the witches as well? How disgusting they are.
Oh, they were disgusting.
They were brilliantly
and the bloody Baron quest is unbelievable.
I mean, that's an absolute heartbreaker. He's such a scummy piece of shit. But my God, when he's swinging from that tree, I felt so bad for him. He doesn't mean it.
I think in my game, he took his wife away to try and fix her.
Oh, really? So he didn't kill himself in your game?
Not in my game, no.
Oh, she left him in mine, and then he just hanged himself.
Oh, yeah, because maybe you were honest with him. I think if I remember right...
I called him out.
You can either say, like, this can't be fixed, or it can be. And I didn't say it. I just let him go and try. I told him, you can't fix this because she's broken. She's gone mad. Yeah. And then he tried again. Then you get to say it again. And I didn't say it again. I was like, I've already told him.
Yeah.
And then so he just takes her away. And that's the last I see of it.
It doesn't necessarily make a good game, but the fact that this has a card game as good as Gwent in it,
I played so much time playing Gwent in the game.
Yeah. If a Gwent side mission came up, that would be my beeline. I was straight into that shit. Gwent is fantastic.
My only problem with it is that there were too many missable Gwent cards, because I would love to go and complete this game and then just run about in the world doing the Gwent missions, but I was like, I need, because I started playing through it again on Xbox recently, and I was like, I need to do the Gwent missions as I'm going, and then it ends up just taking over the game, which was a shame. So I think I just need to drop Gwent and move on. But I wish there wasn't missable cards.
That's a very good point. Yeah, but the fact that they could make collecting the cards for a side game part of so many missions that are good missions
Yeah.
You end up going to like a Gwent tournament and people are trying to get you to throw the match and all this. Oh, it's so good. I definitely need to. As soon as they get this sorted for the next generation of consoles, I'm
get
straight
back in
from the start. I've got the DLC, which I haven't actually finished, but as far
I have
as
never
I'm aware,
played it either.
That's
Actually,
got to win points for being best DLC from what I've heard of it.
Do you know what I did? Was I need to go back and play the DLC, but I played through the game and thought, like, I played 2 then 3, and I've never played 1, and then I was like, oh, I really like Triss in 2. And so I was like, oh, okay, my ultimate love interest is going to be Triss. Chose her, moved on, absolutely broke Yennefer's heart on a Viking longboat.
I remember
and
that,
then,
yep.
And then I felt so guilty about it. And then I was like, oh, I've done it now, though. I've made my choice. And then I started reading the books, and I was like, Geralt, in a million years, would never have chosen Triss. So I need to replay this and go back and choose Yennefer. So I went and I got so annoyed at myself that I went and deleted my save and restarted playing, and I've never managed to get through, and I can't bring myself, I know you can, but I can't bring myself to start the DLC until I've got a finished Yennefer save.
That makes sense. Because I think you get a new love interest in that. So basically I was hanging on for the DLC, giving me a chance at some romance, because my game ended with him and Dandelion hanging out for the rest of time.
Oh no.
Can't have that.
Tossing a coin to the Witcher.
Yeah, that's a great show. Which we haven't really discussed, I don't think. But
no, we haven't.
I
think it's the first time it's come up.
Yeah.
But is there anything more you want to add to this? I mean, like, do you know what? Like, while you're thinking, like, I guess, like, it's not a drawback for the game, but it's a drawback for the game enjoyment. I'll say my point, and then you can maybe put it in better words. But like, the world and the character design and the intrigue and the plot is what I find really, really compelling about this game. The gameplay is good, but what really pushes you forward is finding out what happens next.
Yeah.
It wasn't the developers that made that. Like, they obviously wrote the game and they wrote the side quests and they wrote the compelling dialogue, but they didn't make this world. This was a world that was already pre-built.
Yeah.
Fully formed when they got their mitts on it.
And that obviously then plays into the point I said earlier about how I love playing as Geralt, which is a character that was written by somebody else beforehand.
Who actively doesn't like the games.
Does he not?
No, he doesn't.
Well, I've never read any of his books, so I don't have to worry about what he thinks.
No, you're not missing out.
I can't think of anything profound to say anymore, and I'm just going to devolve into hyperbole, but I don't think I've ever played an open world game I've enjoyed as much as this. Never really got tired of being in that world.
Yeah.
And as far as fantasy games go, I think it's the best one there is as well.
Yeah.
Story, I've struggled to think of certainly some of even just as we said, the side stories that are kind of sealed away from the main plot, which is fine. And I love the way you've treated Ciri throughout the game affects the ending that you get based on how good of a dad you've been. Mm-hmm. But even the self-contained side stories are so perfect and so well written.
See at the end of the game when you're walking with Ciri and then she like tells you that she's going off to go and be a queen.
Yeah.
Like, that felt like a genuine gut punch, didn't it? You could, the way they animated it and acted it in obviously the hours and like tens of hours, perhaps hundreds of hours you have spending with these characters, and you just realise that she's leaving.
Yeah.
It was an utter gut punch, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well done. So well done. After I completed the game, I was running about in the world just like looking at like question marks that I hadn't been to in the whole time I'd played it.
Yeah.
And I ended up just like sailing about, and I came across this island that at no point, I did all the side missions I was directed to. Like, every time one came up, I did it.
Yeah.
So like this was just hidden away. The game doesn't push you there, and you get to this island that has got a lot of fog on it. And then when you get on the island, you find a map that leads you to a treasure, and you discover that like there was a guy who had stolen treasure, and he got cursed on this island, and he died with the treasure. And that's why the island is like shrouded in fog. And
I think I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, he's been killed, and you end up like lifting the curse and getting all this treasure. And what amazed me was that this was so intricately designed and woven, yet at no point did the game ever push me there. It just was because I stumbled across it. and no other reason. Like, if I hadn't just been walking around afterwards because I had nothing else to do in the game and I was looking for something to find, never would have found that. And I bet you there's more. I bet you there's more that I've just never even encountered.
Yeah, quite possibly. There are so many things that you do and you interact with in that game that don't feel disappointing by the end. And I think of so many games I could go back to that have felt that way, where something has started to build itself within like a Fallout game or Elder Scrolls, and you get all excited about where it's going to take you, and at the end of it, it just kind of feels a bit flat or a bit arbitrary. But so much of this game doesn't feel that way and feels meaningful that it's unlike almost anything else.
Shall we crown it?
Yeah, let's crown it. Let's stick it right in at number 1, which we both knew was going to be there before we started.
As soon as we saw our list, I was like, yep, that's the winner. But I'll give it a quick rundown so you guys can hear what we have.
Please do.
Sitting at number 10 is The Last of Us 2. Number 9, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. 8, Apex Legends. 7, Overwatch. 6, Resident Evil 2. 5, God of War. 4, Yakuza 0, 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, 2, Bloodborne, and number 1, The Witcher 3. Is there anything in there that jumps out at you as a surprise how high it got or how low it is?
Well, I mean, like I said, from when I was in the shower this morning, I still don't know if Breath of the Wild should even be in there, as it's on a current gen console. But what's the surprise? I'm just happy that Yakuza's at number 4 because it's just so silly. But
I feel good about God of War's final position as well. I'm glad we actually pushed to get it in nice and high, and it's fallen a bit, but that was a good game.
Yeah, like I said, it won one of our Game of the Years that we did. So we clearly at the time were so into it that it was the best game of whatever year it was that it came out. And obviously that's got to be one of the ones on there that I'm itching for a sequel to more than almost anything else, from what I can see, other than maybe Breath of the Wild 2, if they sort out all the things we complained about when putting it in our top 10 games of the year generation list. Yeah. But I'm pleased with that. I think we've compromised nicely, and we've got our shit in, as the wrestlers would say.
So next up, we're going to be doing BioShock, right?
I'm worried, but because BioShock could be in my top 10 of all time, and I don't know if it will be after we've played it. We'll see how well it's held up.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what you think, because I'm going to go and finish it, but I've played a lot of it recently, and
this is the remaster you've played, right?
Yes. As a, does it matter which one we played?
I'm playing the remaster. Fuck playing the original.
Yeah. You can as a little tidbit, as like a little sort of like taster before we go into the podcast proper. My feelings on it, like, you can see a lot of the tendrils of what almost like it reminds you of what a nascent stage storytelling was at when this game came out in video games.
Okay.
And you can see a lot of the tendrils of where things have gone and where things have come from. But that said, the way it tells its story feels old and quite outdated. Standing and looking for those little, you got to go and find basically tapes that will play back to you. At the time, that was quite groundbreaking and great, because it allowed you to experience the story and fuck off and can't continue to play the game. Now it's not fun. But we'll go back to it, and I'm interested to see what you think of it, and I'm going to remind myself what I think of it as well. And next time we'll come back, make sure you've played that.
So to just give a little preview of what formula we'll be doing, we'll effectively be breaking the episode up into, we'll have sort of a overall broad discussion at the beginning of some of our feelings towards it, and then we're going to go through the game by not massively in-depth bit by bit, but we're going to talk about the main beats of the story, where you start, and the different boss areas and all that kind of stuff. And we'll take you on a little journey through the game with us, and then we'll give it sort of a summary towards the end. We're looking to go pretty deep with it, and I just don't know what to expect from playing it again, because I have such a love for this game. I'm worried, but I'm excited to see what it's like and to start talking about it again.
Yeah, and I guess that's that. We're still messing about. We've got a Twitter now. What is that, Alex?
That is at A Winner Is You Pod, I think.
And you can also send us an email if you fancy it to awinnerisyoupod@gmail.com. I think that's right.
You can indeed. We are on iTunes now. We're on Spotify. We are on Stitcher. We are on Google Podcasts. If you are listening to this just on GoombaStomp's website through the the Podbean link. There's plenty of places to hear this podcast now, and hopefully...
Radio Republic as well. And by time this weekend ends, this podcast will be up on YouTube for you to listen to as well.
Oh yeah, where the first one is also going to be. Or already
Yes.
is. Have you done it?
Not yet. That's my job this weekend.
We'll have a chat while you're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. But
I can talk to you while I play Bioshock while you do the...
Yes, good plan. That is it. That's the date in the bag. But that has been episode 2 of the Exhumed Winners U podcast. I've been David. He has been Alex. We have been a Winners U. And I'm out.
Keep gaming in Rapture.